So what is it that interest groups have that policymakers need so much that I've been talking about? Did you guess? Information. Information. This is extremely important and probably the thing that's most misunderstood about the role that interest groups play in politics. Let me explain once again. Let's use our pioneers of southern Santa Clarita Valley example one more time. So you're an organization, the Pioneers of Santa Clarita Valley, and you're very interested in the environment in Santa Clarita Valley. That's what you spend all your time doing. And that's the way interest groups are. Interest groups often focus all of their energy on a limited set of issues. So when it comes to water cleanliness in the Santa Clarita Valley, there's no one who knows more about it than the pioneers of the Santa Clarita Valley. You guys, you study it all the time. This is something that you're worried about. You get together, you have meetings, you talk about it, you test water, go, oh, this water's good, that water's not good. You guys know what goes in the water treatment. You know all this stuff about the water in the Santa Clarita Valley, what's polluting it, what's not. Nobody else has the kind of information because you guys study it all the time. So what happens is, let's say you go ahead and you're talking to a policymaker and you say, I really think you should do something to go ahead and improve the water in Santa Clarita Valley. And they say, you're right. That would be a very good idea. We should do that. Well, what the interest groups do at that point is they don't just say like, very cool, I'm glad you're going to do that. I'll catch you later. And then leave. They say, here, let us help you out. They tend to be very knowledgeable about these topics, and so what they'll do is they'll help the policymakers write the laws. Not necessarily write out the laws, but they'll give them the information that they need to write good laws. Remember we talked about markups in Congress? Oh, we haven't talked about markups in Congress, but we will later on. But what happens frequently when Congress is going ahead and writing laws is what they'll do is they'll call in interest groups and talk to them about what policy they're interested in. So for example, if I'm on a committee in Congress and we're getting ready to write laws to improve the water in the Santa Clarita Valley, I'm going to want to call people in from the pioneers of Santa Clarita Valley and say, hey, look, we were thinking about passing a law. This is our idea for the law. What do you think? Then your experts are going to go ahead and look at it and go, well, you know what, you should probably focus more on this and this and this, and not so much on this and this, and you might want to include this, you might want to take out that. Because once again, your organization, you guys are the experts. You guys know the Santa Clarita Valley and the water better than anyone else. Well, it's the same thing is true with real organizations rather than this fake one. They tend to be extremely knowledgeable. And because they're so knowledgeable, they can help policymakers write better laws, write more effective laws. That's the key. That's one of the things that interest groups provide. Everybody talks about them as like sort of evil and they're screwing up, they're having a negative influence on our policymakers and they're polluting in the democratic system. There's some truth to that. But the flip side of it is that they are also invaluable. So let me give you a really weird but true example of how interest groups provide information. And this is a true story. A while back I was reading an article, this is quite a while back, and you know how every once in a while in the newspapers, those are things that you can hold in your hand, by the way. They're not on the internet, they're actual papers. But anyways, I was looking through the newspaper, and every once in a while in the paper there'll be like a little tiny article. Like just tiny little square in the newspaper of just like 2 paragraphs. And I read this thing that Congress has just passed a law regulating the interstate movement of monkeys. The interstate movement of monkeys. So the first thing I'm thinking is, well, every other problem in the world must be solved. If Congress has gotten on to the point where now they're talking about the interstate movement of monkeys, it must be that crime, poverty, war, everything else is handled. But apparently not, because the paper was full of other scary stuff. So I thought, I got to look this up. I got to see what this is about. So I went and I actually looked up the work that was done on this bill. There was actually a bill that regulated the interstate movement of monkeys. Now, when I looked into the actual process, what I found out is that the committee that was going ahead and originally going to go ahead and pass the bill, they'd written up the bill, and they called in different organizations and said, hey, look, this is this bill we're thinking about passing. We want to know what you think. And so after listening to what these other organizations thought, these interest groups, what they thought, they wound up changing the law. So here's how they changed the law. The first thing they did is they said, yes, I know that you don't want monkeys going across state lines, but the problem is that there is a shortage of veterinarians who go ahead and actually treat monkeys. There's a monkey doctor shortage. Who knew? Okay, so there's a monkey doctor shortage. Turns out that that's a big problem. And so they said you need to write in the law an exception that allows a monkey to go across state lines if it's going for the purposes of seeing a doctor. So if you're in Delaware and the only monkey doctor is on the next state over, you can go ahead and you can do it. So the committee wrote in something, said, yeah, in case the monkey's going across state lines to visit a doctor, that's okay, but you have to take these precautions and blah, 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 and they changed the law. Then another group piped in and said, you need to make one more change. Or actually, we recommend that you make one more change. I believe this was the ASPCA, the Association for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals. And what they said is, look, if you have all these restrictions about monkeys going across state lines, what happens if a monkey's owner dies and the heir to the monkey, the person who's going to get the monkey next, lives across state lines? You need to allow for the idea that if the monkey's owner dies and the new owner lives across state lines, it's then okay to go ahead and have the monkey travel across state lines. Now, I never would have thought of that. I don't know why, but it never would have occurred to me with the monkey owner dies and then the other, I mean, that's reasonable if you're going to own monkeys, I guess. But in any case, they went ahead and they changed the law and they allowed for an exception going across state lines if a monkey's owner had died and the new owner was going to be across state lines. Okay, so that's a dumb law. Well, not a dumb law if you're a big monkey person, but that's an example of what interest groups can do. They're the ones who have all the knowledge. They're the ones who know these little tiny things that nobody else knows. And so that's how they can be extremely valuable in the legislative process, in the process of writing bills, because they're the ones who have a lot of information about their topic. They're very knowledgeable, and they can help lawmakers write good laws, write better laws, because instead of it being a bunch of people sitting in Washington, D.C. or in Sacramento writing laws, now they can get people who really know the topic and bring them in and listen to what they have to say. So I just want you to remember that when we talk about interest groups, that while you hear a lot about interest groups bad, when it comes to one thing in particular, information, interest groups can be quite helpful. They tend, like I say, they tend to be very knowledgeable about certain topics, and by providing that kind of information to lawmakers, they actually help lawmakers do a better job. Now in the next video, we're going to talk about how interest groups go ahead and what they do to try and affect policy. How do they try and influence policy? And we're going to talk about two things, what we call the inside game and the outside game, but that will be in video Interest Groups 0.04.